Welcome back to That Christian Nerd channel. In today's video, we are going to be reacting to Sofia Isella's song Out of the Garden. Skip to this time code to get straight into the reaction, but I just want to take a couple of minutes to talk a bit before I start reacting to the song. Firstly, I did a reaction video to this feminist music artist, and the reactions that I got was really, really cool. I really love the people that came to the comment section, whether you were critical of my religion or not, whether you were struggling with faith or not. It was really, really cool to see how healthy and intellectually and emotionally engaged the comment section was on that video. Which was really nice. I don't get that often when I am engaging in criticisms of my faith, or when I am engaging in atheists, skeptics, non-believers, that sort of thing. So that was really, really nice to see. Additionally, I was worried because it's a song, the song I was reacting to was a song criticizing the Bible and Christianity. It was a song that was very emotional and needed emotional engagement as well. So I knew that emotions were going to run high. And it's also a song by a feminist music artist. And despite my more positive attitude towards feminism that I expressed in that video that I've talked about elsewhere, a lot of people don't have that positive extension towards feminism. So I did not know how this comment section was going to go, especially with it being a long form video. You know, my long form videos on YouTube on average aren't doing as well as shorts and stuff. But nonetheless, it was a great, the response, I should say, to the video was really, really cool. I think everyone could tell that I love the music artist, that I was okay with delving into the emotional and intellectual um, aspects of the song, to respond healthily to critique, all that sort of stuff. Finally, this reaction video is happening because a commenter suggested that I react to this song as well, where she is also criticizing religion. So I am very interested to hear this critique and to see my thoughts on it. I would love to know your thoughts down in the comment section, so please leave a comment. I do engage the comments pretty consistently, so let me know your thoughts. Thank you to the person who suggested I make this reaction video, and let's get into the song. So Sofia Isella said that this was a song about how religion demonizes people. So I'm very interested to hear this critique. I immediately notice the bugs that create the outline of the woman praying. I don't know what that is supposed to mean or entail, but it is something that I immediately notice. And as I mentioned in the previous reaction video, I absolutely love Sofia Isella's artistry and how she uses visuals to represent the song. So if anyone has an interpretation or a thought on that, I would love to know down in the comments.
Is on her knees, but for all the holy reasons divine, she's talking to nothing, but she is normal and fine.
Okay. So there's this sort of hypothetical counterpart in the song who is a religious female. Very interesting. I I love how she says, like, you're talking to nothing, but you're normal and fine. Of course, in my opinion, that is a assumption of the song, right? That this woman who's praying to God is actually not talking to anything, that God does not exist. Um, of course, I would disagree with that for a ton of different reasons, but this is not a philosophy video, nor is it a apologetics video. So and nor is this song trying to do either for non-belief or atheism or something like that. I think it's doing something else. So but that is that, I think that creates an interesting irony and maybe a little bit of, I don't want to say comedy, but like it's it's something that kind of gives me a laugh for sure.
Based on the virginity and the good, you don't even notice the bullet you're putting in your foot. I'm surrounded by negative light. She hasn't seen anything stronger. She'll call her desire the nemesis and pray a little longer. I'll meet you out in the garden.
So I want to pause it again because that is an interesting thing to note. The relationship between the woman, her faith, and her desire, uh, presumably sexual desire, but this could be any desire. Um, that's really interesting. I know people who are religious who, particularly women, who struggle with their sexual desire because as I talked about in a article where I use Sophia Sellis lyrics to criticize the Christianity and the church and how it treats women, this is one of the problems: is that the body and desire itself becomes evil, or at least that is the impression that many people get from us, even if that isn't what the church is actually saying. That's certainly how it feels. That's certainly how it ends up being treated, is that a woman's body and her desire are problematic in some way. And I dive more into that in the article that you can go check out. I'll leave it linked in the description. But yeah, that's a really important point to make as well. There was something else she said that I wanted to comment on. Let me go back real quick. Your worth is based on the virginity and the good. This is also another fair critique. Um, this is more a critique of purity culture, which was very much a like white Christian reaction to white feminism, which I talk also, I think, believe I also talk about in the article that you can go check out. And this sort of, I think, racism as well that can be entailed in purity culture. But that's a side topic. I think women in particular have a lot of value placed on, in the Christian space, have a lot of value placed on their virginity, not because of them, but because of the religion's value, because of the value that the religion places on female virginity specifically. I think in a lot of Christian spaces, in a lot of Christian mindsets, it's sort of assumed that the man is going to struggle with sexual desire and that they are not going to be as very sexually pure. And so I think it gets left up to the woman to be sexually pure, um, to be a virgin, and that sort of thing. I think you definitely see that dynamic play out in fundamentalists and purity culture spaces where it's assumed that the male, as I talk about in that article as well, is the active sexual agent or active lustful agent, whereas the woman becomes the passive, non-sexual or asexual object. That's often the assumptions that go into really conservative Christian marriages. That a woman is always going to have a responsive sexual desire because she has no sexual desire of her own to speak of. At least functionally, that ends up being the case. So, yeah, I think this is also a very fair critique. And it's a problem. It is a problem. Your worth is based in the fact that you're made in the image of God. Your worth is based in the fact that you're a human being. It's not in the fact that you're a virgin. And I think that's really important for anyone to hear that's in the Christian space or struggling. with their faith, in part because of stuff like this and teachings like this.
I'm surrounded by negative light. She hasn't seen anything stronger. She'll call her desire
Yeah.
the nemesis and pray a little longer. I'll meet you out in the garden, dressed like the devil, like a lamb that's been sharpened. If you puncture me, I won't leak. Something isn't right, isn't human about me.
Can I say, man, she has a beautiful voice. She has such a beautiful voice. That's really interesting.
You know, Hannah, I wanna begin by saying this, that there's a small part of me that's envious that you full-heartedly believe someone is always there, that will always love you, and there's plan for you out there. How beautiful it must feel to be so sure. I don't know anything, Hannah, I don't know anything anymore.
That's really interesting. That's I really appreciate that admission, because I think sometimes when we get into these debates and we get into these discussions about, what is, whether or not God exists and stuff like that, we often, I think, just like have a hard time being vulnerable with the other side and admitting certain things. And I think this happens on both sides of these debates. And so I really appreciate that there's an admission here of like, yeah, there are things that your religion provides that I wish I had. And I'm not the first one to notice this or say something like this. So I used to listen to a Christian rap artist named Lecrae, who made a song talking about how, God sort of became his father because his actual father, that relationship was strained, or his actual father was absent, something like that. And it's certainly true that, in my personal experience of faith, believing in this Trinitarian family of God the Father, the Holy Spirit, who is like a mother, and Christ the Son, and that these three love each other, love everyone, and love you, um, and your parents, have something for you, is, yeah, it's really nice. It's really comforting. It helps you get through a lot. In my personal experience, that doesn't mean there isn't struggle or anything like that. Um, but yeah, it's very helpful. And that's something that it can't really be replicated by atheism, especially because the belief is that God is perfect. So we have this sort of perfect, loving family that we can always go to, and no one, non-religious people, can't say that. Not that you don't have really loving, like, real life family. Obviously, I'm not saying that, but like, no one's perfect. And so that, no one humans love is perfectly loving. And so, yeah, I think that's definitely a benefit. And it's also important for Christians to hear this admission, because the Sophia is saying in this song, as the narrator, that I don't hate religion. I don't hate God. And I'm really tired of Christians saying things like that about non-believers, that are non-religious people, that they hate God, that they hate Christians, that they just want to sin and stuff like that. When that's not necessarily true. It's not a hatred. In fact, there can be envy. There can be an admission of like, you're the ones who are really sure. I don't know anything. And that's a different kind of energy, that's a different kind of vibe, um and a different kind of intellectual and emotional position than what you might find in how Christians, um I think, spread misinformation about non-believers, and honestly about how some anti-theists interact with these subjects. Because yeah, I do think anti-theists, at least not all of the ones I've encountered, but many of the ones I've encountered do have a kind of hostility that makes it difficult to have these conversations and makes it difficult to be vulnerable in these conversations. So, yeah, I think for a lot of different reasons, this is a really important admission to make.
How could you be praying to nothing that gorgeous? Pure sugar you swallow like it's something. I'll be
Can I say as well, part of the reason why I love her imagery, or her artistry, is because of her imagery. Um like swallowing a sugary pill of nothing is like such a way to say it. It's such a way to say it. Um but I really love like the parallels she makes, the visual, like the visuals that she conjures in your mind through her words. Again, I could gush about why I love this music artist like all day long.
out in the garden, dressed like the enemy, nude and hardened. If you kill me, I won't blink. Something is a shell, something's hollow about me.
Yeah, see, like there's something hollow about me. That's interesting. My understanding would be that there's something that she's missing. And that's like all it is. And what I mean by that is, as she talked about, she doesn't have this belief in God, or that, there's this person out there who's loving you and watching you and has a plan for you. And so in that way, it might seem that there's something missing. There's a hollowness to her, to the narrator, to Sophia, but she is again not hostile, um toward, or I should say she's not like angry or anything, um at God. Additionally, I think that lyric is also partially trying to say, because again, this is how religion demonizes people. This is a song about how religion demonizes people. It could also be part of stating that, like, yeah, I'm missing something you have, but I'm not like evil because of it. And I think that's also a very interesting statement. And so it would kind of make those lyrics more about how the Hannah, the religious woman, is perceiving, outsiders. Uh, and so she, at least potentially, um, and it could also be that the Hannah views the narrator as a hollow individual because of the absence of faith. Um, and as a like evil person who's outside the bounds of what's acceptable, um, which would also be an interesting like critique.
nothing gets past you, nothing gets lost. Nothing is past you, nothing is lost.
What? Oh my goodness. So wow. Um, I think that's a critique of women's participation in the demonizing of other people, and the um, maybe patriarchal evils. And so I think those lyrics are kind of, at least in my mind, they conjure images and notions about Christians burning people they claimed were witches. And it's saying like there were women who were participating in the burning of other women, um, and then were comforted by their husbands at night. Like, that's crazy. That's crazy to think about. But this goes to something that a lot of people in academic spaces and feminist spaces and stuff, um, and other spaces I've talked about, like being a part of a marginalized community does not in any way um, uh, um, shed you clean of guilt, and or I should say responsibility for how your behaviors, thoughts, actions, etc. is a participation in the systemic evils of the world, right? um being so like, for example, a great example of this actually, being a black male, in my case, part of a marginalized community, does not mean I can't be sexist or have internalized racism or participate in the systems that propel those realities, right? um Being Asian does not mean that you can't participate in whiteness, which is also something that I've seen a lot of the East Asian community online talk about. So that's very, that I think that's a very poignant critique, and I think that is fair. Um, the and it also really sucks because, like, the religion can sometimes get men and women both to participate in systematic evil. And obviously, black people know this, because of our history and a continued history, in fact, of white men and white women participating in racism, and evils that were propelled against us and continue to be propelled against us. So that's a very poignant critique, and Christians, right, participating in those realities as well. So, um, yeah, that's really interesting, and also it goes to the theme of the song, because the Christians at the time were demonizing these women for being supposed witches when they weren't. So, and certainly not they certainly weren't the, like, um the stereotype of the witch, right? The diabolical witch, which is an idea that you can go research. um they certainly weren't that either, at the very least. So yeah, I think that that's a great parallel to make. It fits thematically with the song and the critique, and again, I think it's fair, and this is something I find myself doing a lot. Like, I disagree with Sophia on, like, the basic premise of the narrator, which is that, like, there is no God. But I agree so much with the critiques that I find in her music, which is another reason why I gravitate toward her music. This is something else, again, I demonstrate in my article, again, linked in the description. Like, there is so much truth in her music, and it extends beyond the secular space and into her critiques of the religious space. Um, and as I hopefully point out in that article, even the critiques of the secular spaces also can be easily applied to to the Christian space as well.
You'll hear them say I told you so. Look at her in medieval, look at her go. Hide your children, stay away from the door. Black out the window, pray on the floor.
That those lyrics give me the sense that Hannah is trying to protect herself and her children from anything that she deems as evil, even if it's not evil. And like again, I agree that that's a problem, right? She's protecting her children from anything that she demonizes. And I also want to agree like with that as well, because I mean, I've experienced this at my university, where you'll get people who are like, you know, Dungeons and Dragons is sinful and evil, and it's witchcraft, and people who participate in it are participating in a grave evil against God. And you get this with other things too. And those critiques are like so weird for so many reasons, but yeah, we've seen, and there are even viral videos, right, of really hard conservative people, of really fundamentalist people demonizing anything and everything. Even like Pokemon, right? Famously, and Dungeons and Dragons, and rock music, and all of these other sorts of things become demonized. Yeah, I even made a video on this, and you can look into the history of this. But even tampons were demonized, and people who used tampons were demonized. I don't know why. I really don't get the logic and reasoning behind that. And I find any logic and reasoning used is typically a gross, and I do mean gross and disgusting, misunderstanding. Um, and just really weird, but yeah, I think that's very valid. Like, you're protecting your children and yourself from things that aren't a problem. Now, me and Sophia and maybe you, if you're watching, would disagree on what some of those things are. But I do agree that religion, that, and we're talking, about Christianity here in my case, because I'm a Christian and that's the religion I know, certainly demonizes things that don't need to be demonized, um, and shouldn't be demonized. And you would think that we would have a better job, that we would do a better job dealing, like, um, uh, not doing that, um, because I think ultimately we're supposed to love God and love neighbor, and I think part of that is discerning who to call out and who not to. Um, but I think a lot of people unfortunately do a really good job at failing to adequately discern that, um, as well as like what to call out and what not to call out, right? Especially when you can factor in like hypocritical judgment and all of these sorts of things. Sometimes Christians are just hypocrites, and hey, I've been guilty of that myself. I have certainly been guilty of that myself. Um, so I think that's a very interesting critique.
Evil's genetics will trap you in flesh. Ooh,
Evil's genetics will
you
trap you in
poor
the flesh.
thing got hooked on me. I'll bet. If you puncture me, you'll see blood running out like a father, like a daddy. If you slice my muscle, I'll bleed. Blood escaping like a dick's beat inside me. Ooh.
What a good simile! Like, what a good, again, comparison. I love the, again, the images that she can conjure through her words. It's really really good. This is also interesting. I think she's trying to say that she's human and she's not this, evil, demonic caricature that religion has made the narrator out to be. Um, and again, I think that's interesting, and certainly, and this is something my pastor emphasized in one of his sermons. But I think it's really important to note that before we go to the fall, and we note that um, sin and moral decay abound, we first need to go to Genesis 1, um, where humans are made good, right? I don't believe anything in Genesis 1 and 2 was perfect. And you can, check out my stuff on theistic evolution for that. I consider myself a evolutionary creationist or theistic evolutionist. And also the text just doesn't say that. But be that as it may, the humans were made good. And I think that making sure we understand that there is a fundamental goodness um, is really important. And would like to think that sort of positive anthropology would be able to humanize us again, um, humanize humans again. And that's not denying the sinfulness of people. I can also be very pessimistic in my view of humans, in part because of studies I've come across, because of the evil that I've experienced in my personal life. Like I don't have a super optimistic view of humans, but um, I think there also needs to be that like positive foundation. And I think that's going to be harder for some religious traditions. If you're really gung ho on affirming the doctrine of original sin and something like total depravity from Calvinist soteriology, then I think this is going to be a lot harder to do. But I reject both, at least common iterations of original sin, and I'm just not a Calvinist, so not that this video is a theological debate. This is a reaction to Sofia Isella, but um yeah, I do uh find that very interesting as well.
Is that what it'll take? Is that it? Final game?
Mm.
Ooh.
Is it gonna take me bleeding and going through all these things for you to understand that I'm human and I'm not the caricature that you've created? I'm not the thing that you need to hide your children from. That's very interesting.
To be so disappointed we're made the same. Are you scared to
Interesting. So it's like this person has made such a caricature of the narrator that to even think that they're the same uh is like has to be like intellectually and emotionally terrifying. Because what does that say about you? And I think she'll say that in the upcoming lyrics, but like what does that say about you? Mm. Mm-mm. Very interesting.
push that knife inside? Afraid of seeing blood where you thought it was dead and dry. Are you scared of seeing muscle come out of me like glue? That something you think's evil is exactly like you.
Yeah. 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 I mean, there's even I mean, okay, well, depends on how you translate and et cetera, et cetera. Lore, theology, manuscript tradition. But there is a passage in Acts 17 where I believe in some translations it'll say that like from one blood or something like that, God has made us all. And of course, Paul and also says in that in him we live and move and have our being. And this is sort of a universal claim that God, uh, that is being ascribed to God, actually based on a pagan text that was applied to Zeus. But my point in saying that is that like I think there are theological reasons to not make a caricature and to say that um, there is a commonality. We are a lot alike. Um, Obviously, we have some intellectual and emotional differences, and I think spiritual differences. Um, but I'm also not in the business of demonizing people. And I've been consistently, as I've expressed in this video, been frustrated with how Christians caricature and characterize um, other people. And I mean, my goodness, this can extend to anything. Pride Month is coming up, and I cannot wait. I actually can for Christians to start talking out of their butt about queerness and uh, call Pride Month Demon Month and all of this sort of really dumb stuff. I cannot wait um, for that. So, um, and you know, this also extends to race as well. Christians like have racist notions and like don't even know. I remember having a conversation with one of my friends where I was like trying to explain to them that race is a socio-political concept, it is not a biological one, and like they just like did not get it, and they just assumed that, which is an assumption I challenged in that moment, but for all of this time they had this racist assumption um that like race was biological and that black people were somehow like better at sports when they trained because they were just naturally more athletic or something. And that was just like so crazy to confront. But like to the point of the song, it is a caricature of black people that I think ultimately does the work of demonizing them, even if it sounds like it's a compliment. It's really not. Um, and it's something that Christians, racist assumptions in general, is something that Christians also have, even if they don't talk about it often or say anything, because often white Christians aren't talking about race, right? Um, so yeah, this extends to several areas for Christians. Mm. Man, what a song! Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was my reaction to Sofia Isella's song Out of the Garden. Still an emotional song. Definitely tears are welling up. But for me, at least personally, not as emotional as Numbers 31, 17 through 18, I believe was the name of the previous song that we had reacted to. Nonetheless, the critiques, as I expressed, were often very valid. And part of the reason to do this series um, is to have this conversation between Christians and non Christians, to have this sort of vulnerability and emotional and intellectual intelligence, but also to have Christians hear these critiques because I think they're important. And I think that if Christians are to love God and love neighbor, then we got to hear some of these things and figure out what to do in light of them. We have to do our best to love God and love neighbor in every age. And if that means hearing critique, um, then I think we need to do that. Um, and hopefully foster a theology and a practice and a lived out experience that will be healthy spiritually, um, uh, psychologically, socially, and physically for everyone involved. So, um, yeah, I hope that helps. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. I would love to see your engagement and your opinions. And make sure you check out the video that I will be uploading next week and the content I will be uploading in the future. Thank you so much for watching, and God bless.